Story 1. The Piano Teacher's Hands. When Emily's parents hired a piano teacher for her summer break, they were just relieved to find someone who could come to their home. The listing had appeared on a local bulletin board, a neatly typed note that read, "Private piano lessons, all ages. Traditional methods. Flexible hours." It had no phone number, only an email address. Her mother sent a message, and within the hour, the teacher replied, "I have one opening left. Thursdays at 6 p.m. That time feels perfect for Emily. It was strange that he already knew her name, but her mother brushed it off. "Probably just read it in the email signature," she said, and went back to her work. The following Thursday, the doorbell rang exactly at 6. The man standing on the porch introduced himself as Mr. Holden. He was tall, thin, and pale, with long, elegant fingers that seemed to curl slightly, even at rest. He wore an old-fashioned suit that looked too heavy for the summer heat. Emily noticed something else. His hands were gloved. Smooth black leather, as if he was afraid of touching anything directly. "Where's your piano?" he asked softly, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. His voice was deep, almost melodic, and for a second, Emily's mom seemed oddly entranced. "It's in the living room," she said, leading the way. Mr. Holden walked over, ran a gloved hand along the piano's edge, and said, "This will do." The first lesson went normally. He corrected Emily's posture, adjusted her wrist position, and complimented her when she played correctly. But every time her fingers brushed the keys, she could feel his eyes on her hands, watching, studying, almost breathing in rhythm with her movements. When the lesson ended, he said, "You have potential, but your hands are too new. They need to remember the music." Emily frowned. "Remember it?" He smiled. "All good hands remember." That night, Emily dreamed of music. Not the kind she usually practiced, but deep, echoing notes that seemed to vibrate from beneath her skin. She woke up to find faint red marks around her wrists, like someone had been holding them. The next Thursday, he returned. Again, exactly at 6. This time, her mother wasn't home yet. He seemed pleased by that. "We'll practice something special today," he said. "A piece only played by those with gifted hands." He sat beside her, closer than usual. When his gloved hands guided hers over the keys, the sound that came out was unlike any piano note she had ever heard. Hollow, almost human. She froze when one of his gloves brushed against her wrist, and she realized it was cold. Not just cold, hard, like porcelain. She glanced down. His glove had slipped slightly, revealing a smooth, pale surface beneath. Not skin. Something else. "Are your hands okay?" she asked nervously. He paused, eyes fixed on her fingers. "They're better than okay," he said slowly. "They've played for over a century." Before she could react, he covered her hands again. "Don't stop," he whispered. "They like your touch." After that lesson, the piano didn't sound the same. When Emily passed it in the morning, she could swear she heard faint notes being played, soft and deliberate, like someone was practicing while she slept. Her parents blamed echoes or her imagination. But then, one morning, her mother gasped from the kitchen. The piano lid was open. Every key was pressed down at once, and small red smears marked several of them. Emily's fingertips hurt, and when she looked closely, she saw tiny cuts she didn't remember getting. She begged her parents to cancel the lessons. Her father laughed. "He's just a teacher, Em. Don't be dramatic." That Thursday, Mr. Holden arrived again. Her parents were out, as if planned. "Why are your gloves always on?" she asked when he sat beside her. He tilted his head. "Would you like to see why?" Before she could answer, he slowly pulled one glove off. His hand was not a hand. It was pale and thin, almost translucent, with black veins coiling beneath the surface. The fingers ended not in nails, but sharpened ivory tips. The skin shimmered faintly, like polished bone. He flexed his fingers. They made a faint cracking sound, like old wood bending. "These hands were once mine," he said softly, "but they've been borrowed many times since. A pianist dies, and their talent must continue. It doesn't fade. It finds a host." Emily stumbled back, her heart racing. "Stay away from me." But he smiled. "You play beautifully, Emily. Your hands deserve to be remembered." He reached toward her. She ran. She bolted into the hallway, slammed the door, and called her mother. No answer. Then she heard it. Music, faint at first, then swelling through the walls. Her piano was playing itself. The same song from her dreams. When she peeked back through the door, Mr. Holden was gone. The gloves lay neatly on the bench. The piano lid slowly closed on its own. For 3 nights, she refused to go near the instrument. But on the 4th morning, her parents called her downstairs. "Sweetheart," her father said, smiling proudly, "your teacher stopped by early and told us you played beautifully last night. You must have forgotten." "What?" she whispered. Her mother laughed. "He even left you these new gloves. Said they'll help your technique." They were the same gloves. Black leather, cold to the touch. That night, Emily sat on her bed, staring at her hands. They tingled, faintly at first, then stronger, like something inside them was stretching awake. From downstairs, a piano key struck softly. Then another. Then another. Her body moved on its own. Step by step, she walked down the stairs, her hands twitching. The gloves were gone. She didn't remember putting them on. But her fingers gleamed faintly under the light, bone white and smooth, moving as if remembering something old. In the reflection of the piano's polished surface, she saw him, standing behind her, smiling. "Beautiful," he whispered. "Now play." And she did. The music poured from her, strange and haunting, notes she didn't know she knew. Her fingers danced faster, the sound deepening into something otherworldly. When her parents came downstairs, they froze. Emily was still playing. But her hands, her small, human hands, were gone. In their place were long, pale fingers tipped with ivory. And behind her, the piano teacher's reflection was still smiling, though he wasn't in the room anymore. From that night on, the piano never stopped playing. Even when no one was near it, faint music drifted through the house, steady and precise, as if the hands that played it no longer needed a teacher. Story 2. The Substitute Tutor. The first time he arrived, it was raining. Not the gentle kind of rain that soaks quietly into the ground, but the kind that pounds against the windows like it's trying to get in. 12-year-old Max sat at the kitchen table, watching the water slide down the glass. When the knock came, 3 slow, deliberate raps that didn't quite match the rhythm of the storm. His mother, distracted and late for work, opened the door before Max could ask who it was. The man standing there was tall and neatly dressed in an outdated gray suit, his hair slicked back, his smile polite but strained. "You must be the tutor," she said with relief. "I wasn't sure you'd come in this weather." He nodded. "Of course. My name is Mr. Graves. I'll be filling in until Mrs. Chapman returns." Mrs. Chapman was Max's usual English tutor, kind and endlessly patient, but she'd fallen ill and sent a message saying a colleague of hers would take over her students for a few weeks. Mr. Graves, apparently, was that colleague. As his mother hurried out the door, she called, "Be good, Max. I'll be back by 7. The house felt quieter when she left. Mr. Graves removed his coat, carefully, almost ceremoniously, and hung it by the door. His movements were slow, controlled, and unsettlingly precise, like every gesture had been practiced in advance. "Shall we begin?" he asked. Max nodded, unsure. The man's eyes were a washed-out gray, so pale they almost reflected light. When he looked at you, it didn't feel like he was looking at you, more like he was measuring you, studying how your face moved, how your mouth shaped words. They sat at the table, and Mr. Graves opened a small, leather-bound notebook. Its pages were yellowed, filled with neat handwriting that didn't look like English. Strange looping characters ran across the lines, interspersed with notes in red ink. "What's that?" Max asked. "Lesson plans," the tutor replied smoothly. "Old methods. Very effective." He handed Max a pencil. "I want you to write your name on this paper." Slowly, Max did. The letters looked normal enough. "Now, Mr. Graves said, I'll show you how names can change meaning." He flipped a page, and next to Max's name, he began writing, copying each letter, but not quite. The shapes twisted, curved, merged with those looping symbols from before. The result looked alien. "What language is that?" Max asked, uneasy. "It's older than language," Mr. Graves murmured. You'll learn soon enough." The rest of the lesson passed in silence. Mr. Graves never raised his voice, never smiled. When the clock struck 7, he stood up, slipped his notebook back into his coat, and said, "You did well today. We'll continue tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" Max frowned. "Mom said you'd only come once a week." Mr. Graves smiled faintly. "Plans change. Some lessons require repetition." Then he left. The next morning, Mrs. Chapman called. "I never sent anyone to replace me," she said weakly over the phone. "I've been in the hospital, but I didn't contact any substitute. Please tell me no one's come to teach Max." Max's mother froze. "But a man came yesterday," he said. The line went dead. She immediately called the school, the agency, everyone she could. No one had any record of a Mr. Graves. That evening, she left work early and rushed home. But the house was empty. On the kitchen table sat Max's homework, pages filled with looping symbols, drawn in heavy pencil strokes that dug deep into the paper. At the top, in neat handwriting, was the name Mr. Graves, and underneath, in Max's handwriting, the words, "Lesson 2 begins at 6. When she called the police, they searched the area. There were no footprints outside despite the mud, no sign of forced entry. They assumed Max had run away. But at 6 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. She opened it, but no one was there. Only a single page of paper, soaked with rain. On it, written in that same looping script, were the words, "He learns quickly." 3 days passed with no sign of Max. Then, early Sunday morning, a neighbor reported seeing lights in the house again, faint, flickering ones, like candles burning in the kitchen. The mother rushed over, heart pounding. When she entered, the air was heavy with the smell of damp paper and something faintly metallic. The kitchen table was covered in notebooks. Some were hers, some were old ones from school, all filled with the same strange writing. And sitting at the table, wearing the gray suit, was Mr. Graves. Except it wasn't him. It was Max. He looked older, impossibly older, his eyes the same pale gray, his posture rigid. He turned to her slowly, his voice calm, eerily familiar. "Mother," he said, "I'm so glad you came. Lesson 7 begins now." She backed away, trembling. "Where is he? What have you done to my son?" He smiled. "He's learning. Just like I did. Just like they all do." For a moment, his hand twitched, then stretched. The fingers cracked as they lengthened, skin tightening over bones too long to be human. His smile didn't move right. It bent at the edges like a mask peeling away. She ran. By the time police arrived, the house was silent. The only trace of life was the open notebook on the table. Its final page showed a simple sketch, 2 figures sitting across from each other at a table, one smaller, one taller, their hands meeting in the center. Beneath it, a sentence in Max's handwriting, "Lesson complete." I remember now. 2 months later, another family moved into the house. A new family with a daughter who needed tutoring. One afternoon, her mother found a neatly folded note on their porch. It was typed on old paper, the ink slightly smudged from rain. "Private lessons available, all subjects. Flexible hours. Traditional methods." And at the bottom, written in faint pencil, "Mr. Graves. Story 3, The Night Tutor." The first night he came, the house was already asleep. Only the soft hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the wooden floors broke the silence. Lily lay awake, staring at the ceiling of her small bedroom, when she heard it, the faint, rhythmic tapping at her window. She sat up, heart pounding. They lived on the 2nd floor. Her parents had recently hired a private tutor for her night lessons, math, science, and advanced comprehension, whatever that meant. She was 16, homeschooled, and her mother believed she was falling behind. The man's name was Mr. Vane, recommended by a friend of a friend. No one had met him in person before the first session, but his references had seemed solid. Still, something about him felt wrong. He always arrived exactly at 9 p.m., carrying a black leather case that never left his side. His suit was always immaculate, his voice soft but sharp, like a blade she couldn't see. He never smiled. And though the sessions were supposed to last an hour, Lily often woke up in bed afterward, unable to remember when they'd ended. That night, the tapping grew louder. Against her better judgment, she approached the window, and there he was. Mr. Vane stood outside, 2 stories up, perfectly balanced on the narrow edge of the roof. His pale face was half hidden in shadow, but his eyes glimmered like wet glass. "Lesson time," he said softly, his voice muffled through the glass. Lily stumbled back. It's not 9 yet," she whispered. He tilted his head. "It's always 9 somewhere." Then he smiled, not wide, but slow, deliberate, like the act itself was painful. He raised a long, thin hand and tapped the glass again. Tap, tap, tap. Lily screamed. Her parents came running, but when they opened the door, there was no one there. The window was locked from the inside. Her father checked outside, walking around with a flashlight. Nothing. No footprints, no ladder, no sign that anyone had been there at all. But when he returned, Lily's mother was holding something. A single piece of paper that had been slipped under the door while they were outside. In elegant handwriting, it read, "Tonight's lesson was interrupted. We'll resume tomorrow. Mr. Vane." The next night, Lily refused to have her session. She begged her parents not to let him in, but they thought she was overreacting. "He's just dedicated," her father said. "You should be grateful someone cares about your education this much." At exactly 9 p.m., the doorbell rang. Her mother opened the door, and Mr. Vane stood there, rain dripping from the brim of his hat. He gave a polite nod. "Good evening. Shall we continue?" Lily watched from the top of the stairs. His eyes met hers immediately, and she swore, just for a moment, they reflected no light at all. Her parents invited him in, and soon they were seated at the kitchen table. Mr. Vane placed his leather case on the table and opened it. Inside were notebooks, pencils, and a small metronome, which he set down and began to wind. Talk, talk, talk. It was hypnotic. Lily blinked, and suddenly, the world around her seemed to slow. Her parents' voices became distant, as if underwater. Mr. Vane leaned forward. "Let's begin," he whispered. She couldn't move, couldn't speak. His fingers brushed hers as he handed her a pencil, and she felt a shock of cold run through her arm. Her vision blurred. She could hear him talking, his voice low, rhythmic, almost chanting. Then everything went black. When she woke up, it was morning. The metronome was still ticking faintly on the kitchen table, but her parents were gone. The chairs were overturned, and the front door hung open. She called for them. No answer. She ran through the house, up the stairs, down the hall. Nothing. In her room, she found something on her desk, a page filled with handwriting that wasn't hers. Long paragraphs, looping words, written in a strange, almost ancient language. At the top of the page, in perfect cursive, it said, "Lesson complete. Sleep well, MV." Lily tore the paper up and threw it away. She was shaking so badly, she could barely breathe. She tried to call her mom, her dad, even the police, but the phone lines were dead. Every number she dialed returned the same hollow tone. That's when she noticed the clock. It was 9 p.m. Again. She blinked. The sun was gone. The windows showed nothing but darkness. And from the kitchen, she heard the faint ticking of the metronome start again. Talk, talk, talk. When she went downstairs, the kitchen was different. The walls seemed longer, stretching away into dim corners she didn't remember. Her parents were sitting at the table, perfectly still. Their eyes were open, unblinking, their mouths slightly parted. Mr. Vane stood between them. "Good evening, Lily," he said. "We've been waiting for you." What did you do to them?" she whispered. He smiled. "I've been teaching them too. You see, everyone learns differently. Your mother was eager to please. Your father," he glanced at him with faint amusement. "He required discipline." He gestured to the chairs. "Sit. It's time to continue." Lily shook her head, stepping back. "No. I'm done. You're not real." "Not real?" he echoed, tilting his head. "Then why do I remember you?" He opened his leather case again. Inside was her notebook, the same one she used for every lesson. But when he flipped it open, the pages were filled not with notes or exercises, but drawings. Hundreds of them. Each one of her sitting at that same kitchen table, staring blankly ahead. Her stomach dropped. "What is this?" Your progress, he said softly. You've done so well. Soon, you'll be perfect. She turned and ran. The house warped as she moved. Doors that once led to rooms now opened into endless hallways. The air grew thicker, darker. Somewhere behind her, the ticking grew louder, faster, merging with the sound of footsteps that weren't hers. Tock, 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 tock. She burst into her room and slammed the door. For a moment, there was silence. Then, faintly, a voice through the wood. Lily. The lesson's not over. She backed away, clutching her phone. It still showed the same time, 9 p.m., frozen. The second hand didn't move. Then, the whisper came again, this time from the other side of the room. She turned. Mr. Vane was sitting on her bed. How? He raised a finger to his lips. Chill. You'll understand soon. You're learning the rhythm. The timing. It's all about control. He stood and reached out a hand. His shadow stretched impossibly long behind him, swallowing the floor. Come now, Lily. Class dismissed. When his hand touched her forehead, everything went dark again. The next morning, neighbors reported hearing strange noises coming from the house, a low hum, like static, mixed with the faint ticking of a clock. When the police arrived, they found the place empty. No sign of struggle, no bodies. Only the metronome on the kitchen table, still ticking. Inside the open notebook beside it was a single message written in Lily's handwriting. Lesson perfected. Next student pending. A month later, a new family moved into the house. They had a teenage son who was struggling in school. One evening, the boy's mother found an envelope slipped under their front door. It read, "Private tutoring available, evening sessions only. Proven success rate. Flexible hours. M." Vane and attached was a photo. A blurry Polaroid of a girl sitting at a kitchen table, staring blankly ahead. Her name, written on the back in faint pencil, was Lily. Story 4, The Language Teacher. The first day he walked into her life, Emily thought he looked like someone who had stepped straight out of an old painting. His clothes were immaculate but outdated. A gray suit pressed so sharply it almost gleamed, his shoes polished like mirrors. His eyes, a dull green, seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. And when he spoke, every word was measured, smooth, and deliberate. "Good evening," he said, bowing his head slightly. "You must be Emily. Your mother told me you'd like to learn a new language." Emily nodded awkwardly. Her mother smiled, relief softening the edges of her exhaustion. "She's starting French next semester, and Mr. Corvin is highly recommended. Teaches privately. We're lucky to have him." Mr. Corvin smiled, polite, but never warm. "French," he said, with a faint accent that didn't quite belong anywhere. "Yes, that's what we'll start with." That night was their first lesson. It didn't feel like French. Mr. Corvin unpacked no books, no worksheets, just a small, leather-bound journal filled with strange, handwritten characters that Emily had never seen before. They weren't French or any language she recognized. "What's that?" she asked. He smiled faintly, as if pleased by her curiosity. "A dialect. Ancient. French grew from many roots, and some still whisper beneath the modern tongue." He opened the book to a page filled with curling symbols, each drawn in black ink that shimmered faintly in the light. "Repeat after me," he said. He spoke a word, a sound soft and lilting, yet heavy with something she couldn't name. Emily hesitated before repeating it. The syllables rolled strangely on her tongue, like they didn't belong there. "Good," he whispered. Again, he made her repeat the word 3 more times, slower each time. The room seemed to grow colder with each repetition. When the lesson ended, he told her, "Practice tonight. Speak it before you sleep. It will help your memory." She didn't. But when she dreamed that night, she heard the word over and over, whispered by dozens of voices in the dark. By the third lesson, Emily was unsettled. Her mother was always gone when Mr. Corvin arrived, working late shifts to cover the bills, and somehow, he always came precisely at sunset. The moment the sun dipped behind the trees, the doorbell would ring. Each night, his lessons grew stranger. He no longer pretended to teach French. The symbols in his book were becoming clearer to Emily, as though she'd seen them before. When she read them aloud, her throat ached, her vision dimmed, and sometimes the air in the room would ripple faintly, like heat waves. Once she asked, "What language is this really, mister?" Corvin's smile flickered. "One older than speech itself," he said softly. "But it remembers you." "Me?" He tilted his head. "You've spoken it before." That night, when she brushed her teeth before bed, she noticed faint black lines forming under her tongue, like veins or ink. The next day, her mother looked more tired than usual. She sat at the breakfast table with her coffee, eyes half open. "Mom?" Emily asked. Her mother blinked slowly. Are you okay?" "Just tired," she murmured, rubbing her temples. "It's strange. I keep hearing someone whispering when I try to sleep. Like chanting." Emily froze. "What kind of words?" Her mother frowned. "I don't know. Something foreign. Probably just stress." Emily nodded, pretending to believe it. But she couldn't shake the dread curling in her stomach. That evening, Mr. Corvin came again. The sky outside was bruised purple, the air heavy. He smiled faintly as she let him in. "Good evening, Emily. You look pale. You've been practicing, yes?" She shook her head. "No. Before she could finish, he opened his journal. "Then tonight, we'll make up for lost time." He placed a candle on the table, lighting it with a match that hissed in the silence. "Read," he commanded, sliding the book toward her. The page was filled with the same symbols, but now, when she looked at them, they seemed to move, curling and breathing like living things. Her voice trembled. I don't want to." He leaned closer. "You must. It's how you remember." "Remember what?" she whispered. His eyes gleamed. "Who you were before." Emily's pulse thundered in her ears. "You're scaring me, Mr. Corvin sighed softly, as if disappointed. "Then perhaps I've pushed too quickly. Forgive me." He stood, closing the book with a quiet snap. "Rest. Tomorrow's lesson will be shorter." But when he left, the candle didn't go out. It burned all night long. The next morning, her mother didn't wake up. She was alive, breathing, but her eyes wouldn't open. The doctors couldn't explain it. They said it was a catatonic state, something rare, something they didn't understand. Emily sat beside her hospital bed, gripping her mother's hand. "Please," she whispered, "wake up." But when she leaned closer, she swore she heard something under her mother's breath, a faint murmur. It was the same language Mr. Corvin had been teaching her. She locked the door that night. When the doorbell rang at sunset, she didn't move. It rang again. Then came the knocking, slow, rhythmic, deliberate. "Emily," came his voice, muffled through the wood. "You missed your lesson." "Go away," she whispered. A pause. Then, "You can't unlearn what you've begun." The knocking grew louder. "You called me, Emily." You spoke the words. Her heart pounded. "I didn't mean to." The voice softened. "Intent doesn't matter. Language is memory. And you've remembered too much." Silence. Then, from somewhere inside the house, the sound of pages turning. Her stomach dropped. The journal. It was still on the kitchen table. She crept down the stairs, gripping a flashlight. The living room was dark, but the journal was open again, its pages fluttering on their own. And there, sitting at the table in the candlelight that hadn't been lit, was Mr. Corvin. "Good evening," he said pleasantly. How did you get in?" He smiled. "You let me in the night you spoke your first word." She backed away. "You're not real." "On the contrary," he said, standing. "You're the one who isn't." He pointed to the mirror across the room. Emily turned and saw her reflection mouthing words she hadn't spoken. Black veins pulsed under the skin of her neck, crawling upward like ink spreading through paper. "What's happening to me?" she whispered. "You're remembering," he said softly. "You're coming back." Her reflection blinked, and for a second, it wasn't her. It was something older, hollow-eyed, with a faint smile. Emily screamed. Mr. Corvin closed the journal. "You'll thank me soon," he murmured. "Language connects souls, Emily. And yours was promised long ago." When she woke, she was lying on her bedroom floor. Morning light filtered weakly through the curtains. Her mother's voice echoed faintly from the hallway. "Emily?" "Breakfast." Relief washed over her. She ran downstairs, only to freeze. Her mother stood at the stove, humming softly. Her back was turned. "Mom." She turned, smiling. But it wasn't her mother's smile. Her eyes were green, Her voice, soft, deliberate, rolled like silk. "Good morning, Emily. We have so much to practice today." Emily stepped back, trembling. "No, you're not her." Her mother smiled wider, and her skin rippled faintly, as though something beneath it was trying to push through. "Language shapes reality," she said calmly, "and I've rewritten yours." Emily ran for the door, but it wasn't there anymore. Only the wall, covered in curling black symbols that pulsed faintly, breathing in rhythm with her heartbeat. From upstairs, the sound of a candle being lit. And then his voice. "Lesson 4, Emily. Let's begin." When the police eventually entered the house weeks later, after neighbors complained of a flickering light that never went out, they found no sign of Emily or her mother. Only a table with a single open book resting on it. The ink was still wet. On the last page were 2 sets of handwriting, one sharp and elegant, one trembling and childish. It read, "Lesson complete. New instructor assigned." Beneath it, a signature, E. Corvin, and beside it, drawn in perfect looping ink, the faint outline of a candle flame that shimmered even in the dark. Story 5, The Art Instructor. When Mia signed up for summer art lessons, she expected paintbrushes, easels, and perhaps a few awkward still life drawings. What she didn't expect was to find herself in a classroom where art wasn't just created, it was consumed. Her parents had enrolled her in a local private art program taught by a woman named Miss Lorraine, whose paintings had once hung in galleries across the country. The town spoke of her as a recluse who had retired early, withdrawing from public life after her husband vanished under strange circumstances. Her return to teaching, the flyers said, was an exclusive opportunity for gifted students. The studio was in her own home, a vast Victorian house that smelled of linseed oil and wet clay. Inside, the walls were lined with portraits, not just of people, but of faces, dozens of them. Men, women, children, all painted with haunting accuracy. Their eyes seemed alive, their gazes following you no matter where you stood. On the first day, Miss Lorraine greeted Mia at the door. She was tall, graceful, and unsettlingly pale. Her fingers were stained with red and brown pigments that looked disturbingly like dried blood. "Welcome, my dear," she said in a voice that purred like velvet. "You have the kind of hands that understand art. Delicate, emotional. I can tell." Mia tried to smile, though something in her gut told her to leave. Inside, the class was small, only 3 students, all around her age. The others barely spoke. Their faces looked tired, their movements slow, like they hadn't slept in days. They painted landscapes, portraits, and still life scenes, but Miss Lorraine's lessons were always strange. "Paint what's inside," she'd whisper, pacing behind them. "Not what your eyes see, but what your soul remembers." When a student's painting didn't meet her approval, she'd lean close and murmur, "You're not giving me enough of yourself." One day, Mia noticed something odd. The boy sitting beside her, Jonah, was painting a self-portrait. His expression was blank, hollow-eyed. The next week, he didn't return. Miss Lorraine told them he had transferred to another program. But when Mia passed by his unfinished canvas, she froze. Jonah's eyes in the painting were glowing faintly, like something trapped behind the surface was trying to get out. Over the next few days, the house seemed to change. The air was heavier, and the portraits on the walls seemed to move when she wasn't looking. The painted eyes darted subtly, tracking her steps. Once, she could have sworn she heard a faint whisper when she passed one of them, a trembling voice that sounded like it was calling her name. "Do you hear that?" she asked Miss Lorraine during one class. The teacher smiled without looking up. "Art speaks, Mia. Only true artists can hear it." That night, Mia stayed late, finishing her painting after everyone else had gone. The house creaked and groaned as if something inside its walls was breathing. She walked past a half-open door and saw Miss Lorraine in a small, candlelit room, her back to Mia, hands moving swiftly. On the table in front of her was a canvas covered with wet paint, but Miss Lorraine wasn't using brushes. She was pressing her hands into it. The paint glowed faintly red. Mia's heart stopped when she realized those weren't pigments. They were smears of flesh tones, and something pale and limp hung from the ceiling above, dripping slowly. She stepped back, a floorboard creaked, and Miss Lorraine turned. Her eyes caught the light like glass. "Curiosity," she said softly, "is the beginning of artistry. Would you like to learn what it means to truly create?" Mia fled. The next day, she told her parents she didn't want to go back. But when they called the number on the brochure, it rang to a disconnected line. They drove to the address. No one was there. The house stood abandoned, the windows boarded, the front door chained shut. The neighbors said no one had lived there for years. Confused and terrified, Mia ran to the back, where she remembered the art room had been. Through a crack in the boards, she saw the faint shapes of paintings still hanging on the wall. One caught her eye, a portrait of a girl with long brown hair, holding a paintbrush. Her own face stared back at her. Her parents couldn't see it when they looked. They told her it was just shadows. But every night afterward, when Mia tried to sleep, she'd dream of a dimly lit studio filled with whispering voices, calling her name. "Come back," they'd say. "You haven't finished your masterpiece." Years later, when she moved away to college, Mia took an elective art course. On the first day, the professor introduced a new guest instructor, a woman with porcelain skin and gentle eyes. "Please welcome Miss Lorraine," he said. Mia dropped her sketchbook. Miss Lorraine smiled, stepping to the front of the room, her hands still faintly stained with red. "I'm so happy to see familiar faces again," she said. Then, staring directly at Mia, she added, "Some art takes time to complete." And for the rest of the semester, Mia never touched a brush again. But sometimes, she'd find faint red fingerprints on her art supplies, smears that appeared overnight, no matter where she hid them. And in the dark corners of her dorm, the shadows always seemed to move just slightly, as though someone unseen was watching, waiting for her to finish what she'd started.